The reality is we're inheriting a much scarier world than our parents' generation did. If you look at our experience in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, what has politics really given us? What kind of major program can we point to and say, yes, like this is why I believe in our government. This is why I believe in politics.
That is Adam Shedletzky, and this is Tiny Conversations. I'm Brian Colley. Adam is the co-founder of Lead Now.
I'm also a law student at the University of Toronto.
Lead Now is a grassroots organization aimed at getting Canadians more politically involved. I recently heard Adam speaking about Bill C23, otherwise known as the Fair Elections Act, and he said some pretty alarming things. I decided to meet with him at his apartment in Toronto to ask him more about this bill and what it means for Canadians. Like I said, what I wanted to talk to you about was Bill C23. Basically, if you could just tell me what it is and what its major implications are for the average Canadian citizen.
Sure. So what Bill C23 does is, rather than focusing on the dirty tricks played by political operatives in the robocall fraud in 2011, it imagines this problem of fraud by individual voters, and it removes the ability for Canadians to use two processes called vouching or the use of voter information cards that make it easier for people to vote, especially marginalized groups such as young people, seniors, and Aboriginal peoples living on reserve. And there is absolutely no evidence, there's no reason why we should be making it harder for people to vote. There's not one case of individual voter fraud that's been identified by the minister or anybody else. And we know from the United States that when you make it harder to vote, less people vote. And the other major problem with this bill, and there are many, is that it doesn't give Elections Canada the main power they requested in order to investigate and tackle the kind of fraud that we saw in 2011, and that is the power to compel testimony.
One of the good ways that you sort of brought up of looking at this is, if this bill passes, what would reality be like? So in terms of Elections Canada, there's some really great things that they do besides investigating potential electoral fraud. What are some of the ways that we on a day-to-day basis see Elections Canada working? So
Elections Canada does many things, from conducting research into best practices of how to run elections or how to engage citizens. So they do that research and they publish it, which is very important for Canadians to figure out how our democracy is working and how to improve it. They also run very important student vote efforts in combination with not-for-profit organizations. And given that right now only 40% more or less of young people vote, so that's why it's so important for Elections Canada to have the power to continue to find ways to engage youth, such as doing mock elections during high school to get students used to voting, so that when they come of age, it just seems like it's a natural thing to do, and they've had some experience with it. Evidence has shown that when young people are exposed to some type of democracy or government course when they're younger, they are 14% more likely to vote than those who are not exposed to a democracy or government course when they're younger. And Elections Canada runs these kind of programs.
One of the things, and this is what I connected most to with this bill, is that you and I fall into the youth category, or we're pretty close to the youth category. And with this proposed bill, I was looking at it and going, I wouldn't have been able to vote in several federal elections because I was using a voucher at the time. I was going to school in another province. And there were a variety of issues that came up to that. And then as you were talking about sort of youth being disenfranchised, I was thinking about sort of statistics and how like half the population in the world globally is under 30, and how there's this rising power of youth. And yet I think sometimes we think that we as young people don't have power. So
I think I would say that we have lots of unrealized potential. And like you said, there are more and more young people, especially in developing countries. And the reality is we're inheriting a much scarier world than our parents' generation did, or our grandparents' generation. If you look at our experience in the last 10 years, the last 20 years, what has politics really given us? Right? What kind of major program can we point to and say, yes, like this is why I believe in our government. This is why I believe in politics. So I think that right now a major problem is many people who are, under 30, under 35, don't have any lived experience of government actually being useful. It's a time suck to invest time in politics, because what do they do for me anyways? And I think what we're seeing more and more young people realize that the realities of the age that we live in right now require us to do more. And what we need to do is, those of us who are engaged and who see the importance of having an active government that prices carbon and that levels the playing field for those that are worse off, so they have as much opportunity as those that are better off in a world with growing inequality, is that we need to talk to more and more people, share stuff on Facebook and Twitter.
It was actually through Lead Now that I found out about this. I subscribed to the emails and I saw this, and then I went, okay, I can tell the importance of this. And regardless of who you support, it's not about who you politically support. It's about democracy and just as many people as possible having a voice. And so I thought, I got to tell my friends. And that was a really hard conversation to have, because it's exactly like you said. They go, why should I care about politics when my job, my social life, even just some really sort of basic things, just developing some stability in their life.
People are open to being engaged politically for very limited points of time. It's when an issue that they care about is all of a sudden part of a national conversation. So what Lead Now does is we have really easy to understand and easy to access petitions or email and MP tools where a friend will find out about it on Facebook or on Twitter. They'll click on the link, and within 30 seconds, they know what we're asking them to do. They know what the issue is, and they can fill in their first name, last name, postal code, email address, hit submit, and then all of a sudden, you've directly communicated with your member of parliament about an issue that you care about, and then you're on our email list, and then we can update you on other campaigns, introduce you to other issues, etc.
For someone who, let's say, goes, okay, yes, voting and access to democracy and everything that is I care about that. What's the next step in terms of them getting involved?
If you've already spoken to them and they agree that this is important and that we should be making it easier, not harder, to vote for Canadians, the easiest entry point is going to leadnow.ca, and you'll see very clearly the button to press to add your voice to those who are opposing the current bill. And by doing that, you're able to join our email list, and there will be follow-up actions to happen in the weeks to come.
Tiny Conversations is a podcast featuring small discussions on big ideas. If you liked what you heard, you can subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher. Our theme music is by Broke for Free. You can learn more about Lead Now on their Twitter at LeadNowCA.
And our Facebook page is Lead Now Canada.
I tweet at Brian Colley. Thanks for listening.